partidei. Delgado acolo este, va fi corner, dragi ascultători.
One hide and seek.
Oh,
So you
no.
didn't get that I was just singing a song that actually exists, but
I figured
cleverly
you
reflected.
figured you were, and I figured from context I gathered you had. Yeah.
Yeah.
In your head, Ed. In your hair, Ed. Zombie. E. It's a touching tribute to the Cranberries there. I'm Richard Jackson, and I'm joined by Duncan Casey. We run things around here. Welcome to Val Verde Broadcasting. Now, this week's episode is kind of vague, but you've already clicked on it, probably because it has the words Alan and Partridge in the title. Now, we talked about The Simpsons recently in a special, and this is a counterpoint to that's going to get way fewer views. But we reference Alan Partridge constantly. And people in our content, in our comments, constant Partridge deep cuts in our comments, which we love. I say telescopic dampness, I mean rigid stays. I just wanted to speak about this, firstly because I think it's something we could speak about with ease, and I'm not necessarily talking about dissecting episodes.
No.
It's something that holds a particular fascination for a particular age group, quite a broader age group than you think. But it's something that my parents liked at the time but don't like, and it's something that our age group, plus or minus 10 years either way, seems to be mildly obsessed with and able to quote endlessly.
There is and I don't know if it's... would you say it's largely male-based?
I think it's skewed in that it's sort of like...
Yeah.
I view it... I mean, I know it isn't exclusively.
No.
My friend Kirsty and I based our whole thing on constant Partridge shit, like
Right.
all the time. And hey, bunch of girls I know are really into it as well, but it seems to be... It used to be Monty Python, where it was loads of blokes who would sit around and quote Monty Python. Now, for our age group, if you throw out an aha or whatever, chances are all the blokes in the room are going to go for it. Like,
Yeah, because I think what's fascinating about it is it's like it's a it's an abject lesson in how not to be as a male, but also more broadly just a human being.
Human being, yes.
And yet there is this fascination that we watch it, and I think because it speaks so much to the truth of certain things, I know Steve Coogan has described it as like him but without a filter. So like Alan will say whatever, and it's kind of like, I think there's that, but I think also it's the fact that it's pure id, pure ego, it's pure, and it's like what we imagine we must be like to the rest of the world, perhaps, and there's a weird thing where you want to watch it, you want to know what's going to happen, you want to see more of Alan and his life and all that sort of, and it's weird, but it's
Isn't
such
it
a
odd?
twat.
Because it's rooted in mundane Britishness.
Yes.
Like the mundanity. I mean, every culture is a mundanity, and this is it's sort of like Middle England Daily Express, not Daily Mail, Daily Express, really, because there's a difference. There's a sort of layer of blandness to that.
Yeah.
It's sort of like what's interesting about it is, well, there are many things that are interesting about it, but I just sort of think like there is a fascination with the mythology and his world, and it's about a radio presenter that lives in Norwich. And when it's like James Bond or Star Trek, to go to our pools, it's kind of like, oh, well, there's all this stuff written about it, and it's all about spaceships, it's all amazing.
Yeah.
This is about sort of like this really awkward middle-aged man who lives in Norwich.
Well, and it's funny that you get, and there's two things on this. So, firstly, you bring up James Bond. That's a fascination of his, and it's like anything like that where he's a fanatic about it. You kind of go,
you have to question your own sort of. Yeah.
James Bond is a great one to use because obviously now, in the fullness of time, whichever Bond you choose as your favourite tells the audience a lot about you, and of course his favourite is Roger Moore. So it's like, and he sort of almost, he's quaffed in the same way.
His kind of hero worship of Roger Moore.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's kind of, that's just a great way of saying something about the character without actually doing it. But there's also the products he uses. Again, I mean, and this is a very Bondian thing, and again, through the lens of British mundanity. James Bond was a lot of what Hal Fleming would inform you about his character is the products he would use, although they were luxury and high end. Alan's version of high end stuff, like Lexus, right?
It's a Japanese Mercedes.
Yeah, exactly. that's the Japanese Mercedes. But it's like that. I'm sure had a massively adverse effect on Lexi plural sales in the UK. It had to have done because people would have looked at that and gone, "Oh, my best friend's dad had one of those, an IS200. It was silver instead of blue, and we really liked it. And then Alan Partridge drove one, and we're like, oh no, you can't drive that."
I've never thought of it like that, but you're absolutely right. The lens through which you see him is his products, and like Lynx Africa and a Lexus, Castrol GTX,
a Motorola Time Port. It's all the stuff that isn't cool as well. It's all the anything with a name like that.
Tungsten tip screws as well.
And he refuses to drive a Mini Metro.
They've rebadged it, you fool.
He refuses to drive Mini Metro, but he wants to drive a Rover Vitesse, which is the most, again, such an example of British Leyland mundan. It's just this sort of just this failing car that's gone out of business now. It's just, it's just like, it is.
I know,
way to.
It's Steve Coogan's had a love-hate relationship with it for ages, and he's come back and done it recently. And for my part, I really love all of the Gibbons brothers have taken over a lot of the writing, and I think they do Partridge really, really well. And I like all the new Partridge stuff. I thought this time was really great. I know it's weird that because Coogan could just turn it on and off, so it definitely comes from within him. Because if you watch him in interviews, he will sort of. He doesn't mean to. Sometimes he does a Partridge thing knowingly, but other times he kind of goes like, "It was purple," or whatever. You know what I mean?
Like we often do. If we've got to describe a geeky thing, we'll do it in that.
But that's why sometimes he does it knowingly, and sometimes I think. Well,
that's what I mean. I think that he does that without. It's just a thing he slips into. He did the premiere for Alpha Papa in Norwich.
I know, yeah.
In character. So it's kind of that's.
One of my friends went to that because they're from around there. I would to meet him in character, and we wore that kind of blue safari suit thing. Yeah. Like that's amazing. That's so good. I mean, it comes from the School of Comedy of Armando Iannucci and Patrick Marber and Leon Herring and Chris Morris. Yeah. So it comes out the day-to-day. And I think the kind of, what I also find really interesting about this is that character traverses formats because it has its own, because he's done a bunch of in-character chat show appearances which on their own exist in the real world and in the fiction of Partridge. Yeah. So that Jonathan Ross one is great.
Right, yeah.
Did you see the Clive Anderson one years ago?
No. Because it started again on a sort of what was the show he was on for the very.
So it was the day-to-day on the radio,
right? Okay.
And then it's day-to-day on TV, right. And then there was.
He was a football commentator or something.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
That's liquid football. He's got a foot like a track. It's like if I commentated on football. Yeah. So it's day-to-day on the radio. There was day-to-day on TV. There was knowing me, knowing you on the radio. There's knowing me, knowing you on TV. So you've got fake news, you've got fake chat show, and then the sitcom that follows it. And then I think the one that's most fondly remembered is I'm Alan Partridge, which is the 2 series of the sitcom that followed his life. Quite a fair old few years apart, like 5 or 6 years apart. Right. And the settings change from the Linton Drums to second. I think those are kind of peak Partridge to most people.
They are to me. I mean, that's certainly the stuff I've seen the most of.
Well, there's something so in the world of like Partridge ephemera, like because I love going on YouTube and collecting kind of Partridge ephemera because I'm that boring cunt. But like so at the time of series 2 of I'm Alan Partridge, he went on in character to Clive Anderson's show. Right. And obviously Clive Anderson was famous for being kind of quite rude to people and stuff, but obviously it's like an in-character thing. It's really good because Coogan just comes out and he's doing a lot of, I'm sure parts of it are scripted, but a lot of it's on the fly. And he does this really great, uncomfortable interview because Clive Anderson, if you look up Clive Anderson interviewing the Bee Gees, it's an absolute train wreck.
I remember,
So like it's in the kind of wake of that. And there's a bit where Clive Anderson says something, he kind of goes like, "Urgh." There's a comic relief stuff as well with Simon Pegg and Peter Kay and stuff.
Yeah,
it's all
the last one. Did you see the last comic relief thing he did?
What, for like a recent comic?
The last comic relief. Yeah.
Oh yes, I did. Yeah,
so good
because that was tied into the kind of this time stuff.
Yeah. That was hilarious.
Well, that's because the news is the news, right? The chat show was essentially Wogan. I'm Alan Partridge was a sitcom, but like this time the stuff that just came back is the One Show. Yeah. And it is this absolutely spot on version of the One Show. Like the whole, the internal reality of it is so well maintained.
Well, and I wonder if it does stem largely from because, like you say, I think Coogan now just knows him inside and out. He can literally turn it on and off, as you say, which informs so much of what goes on. And it's like and that is the perfect example of like so much of Alan Partridge is in those little snide remarks and comments and the fact that and I can't remember which episode it was, but it was the one with the guy who turned out to be their former co-host who turned out to be the one he's replaced.
Oh, he was like Me Tooing, yeah.
And it's like right at the end of that, it's like Alan quite often is right and wins and has those victories, but the needle goes past 12 and he can't stop. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it's like you can't quite root for him because you know it's largely driven by ego. But
that's what's kind of great, isn't it? Because he's sort of a heel.
Yeah.
Because he's meant to be an arsehole, and like you watch the stuff with him. The great British tradition, not necessarily just in comedy, but quite often in comedy, and it's something that American things only started doing in the last 20 years ago, is having like a loser for a hero. So like Larry David and Curb and all that, and Eastbound and Down. American stuff wasn't doing it at the same time we were doing it. They arrived at that at a different time, and it's a loser character who is a bad person. But it kind of makes his victory sweeter because when he is put upon and kind of downtrodden, you kind of realise that because the reason he is that is because he's a bit of a loser, he's a bit of an idiot. But then he'll go and do something shitty again, and you're sort of like, well, he kind of deserves it.
Yeah, it's
a
funny
strange.
Because it's the fact that he's at odds so much. He's at odds. Obviously, initially it's the BBC, right? And that's the kind of his. And there was a bit of that in that comic relief thing when he's complaining about. I think it's like quotas and hiring in the BBC, and he's going off on one about. And it's that kind of like he can't help himself. He can't get out of his own way, and yet and all the things he rails against. And there's I'm not saying I agree with him, but there's that kernel of righteousness that's going on in him all the time. And occasionally he has little victories that you kind of allow him.
Yeah,
it's brilliant in that, allowing him those victories and then totally whipping it back again. And like,
that's such an about face, because like the thing. And again, in the kind of, there's this quite meticulously maintained continuity around Alan Partridge. It's sort of like, because you're either looking directly at his life like the film or like the sitcom, or you view it through the lens of a format. But there's still this, because like the end of Know Me, Know You, he accidentally shoots Forbes McAllister. I can't remember, he's an art critic or something, played by Patrick Marber. That comes up again in some small way. And then there's the books, which reference. The books have his versions of what. So you remember Jed Maxwell? That's the stalker guy. In the book, like it's his version of it, which is great because it's his own retelling in his own words, and he's sort of like, I can't remember, like judo chops him, and in his version he's like the hero. But we've seen the real version.
Well, that's true. So it's interesting. Yeah, it's a character now that, as you say, has been the idea of perspective on his world has been played with an awful lot, and it's like the recent one.
This time.
Yes, it's through the prism of the One Show, but you do get, when they're off air, we're then sort of the perspective is behind the scenes. So it's not always, even though we never really leave the studio. Ever leave the studio? Does that show stuff outside?
Not as live. So that they throw it. They'll either throw away to a VT and it's a pre-record of Alan outside the studio.
That's right.
Or, that's interesting because that's one of the times where it blends the format. So it's a spot on. If you don't know what the One Show is, look it up. It's a kind of corny, inoffensive BBC magazine show that's been running in the evenings for 15 years or something. So they've done a spot-on version of that. And what they do, they either throw away to a VT and we see the VT, or they throw away to a VT or a live broadcast and then we get what's going on in the studio, which adds loads of context because the relationship with that other presenter, I can't remember her name, that actor, she's fucking amazing. She slots into that world so well. She's got this kind of, you can just see in her face how fucked off she is. And then Lynn's coming in as kind of Lady Macbeth, trying to like pick it. And of course, Cambridge's own Tim Key as Psychic Simon, so out of his depth, like horribly out of his depth and ballsing it up. But this blends back to my point, it blends the two things. So it's usually absolute, but this time you get.
Yeah, because the sitcom, especially the second one, but I think both of them, they were shot in a fairly documentary style way. Yeah. So I think, it wasn't like they weren't out and out saying this is a documentary crew following him, because obviously you did that, the character would be too much playing up to the the thing, but it was documentarian in its approach. So it was like a day in the life of Alan.
As a sidebar, and again, this is the thing. You can get geeky about Partridge to the level of Star Trek or James Bond or whatever, because there's all this ephemera. On the DVD commentaries, there's a Lynn and Alan in character commentary, but they have to square the fact it's a sitcom, so they do say I think they say it's reenactments mixed with real footage.
Oh, right,
as being in canon. And the thing is, this is the problem, and I think people younger than us are going to start hating it because it's the way a lot of people turn off Monty Python because it's just people fucking going on about it all the time.
Yeah.
Our age group constantly talk about Partridge, so I wouldn't blame younger people for getting sick of it. But as soon as you get geeky about Alan Partridge, you become Alan Partridge.
Well, inherently,
you are Alan Partridge.
Yeah.
So I say this time. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, knowing me, knowing you.
Yeah,
and again, it's got this weirdly, quite meticulously maintained sort of fiction, and it crosses over into the real world from time to time.
Yeah.
And then you have to assume that fiction that exists in the fiction of Partridge, but it's also a real thing that happened.
Yeah.
It's really like. And again, there are books, there are audio commentaries, there are DVD extras. There's a thing, I can't remember I don't know when it was recorded, I only just discovered it, and I'm normally quite good with my Partridge ephemera, but there's Chris Morris in character as Chris Morris from Brass Eye / A Day to Day, and Alan Partridge catching up with each other a few years apart, and they talk about like 9/11 and Princess Diana's death and stuff like that. Jeez. It's amazing. It's because Chris Morris's character is kind of the hard-nosed, pants-wearing guy, and Alan Partridge is Alan Partridge. It's like Alan Partridge. I think he's trying to say. I can't remember how it goes. He's trying to say that like they planted a bomb inside JFK's head and detonated it as he drove past the library.
But it seems like, because obviously he moved it. Was it for Sky that he? Oh no.
Yeah, Sky Arts was the Scissored Isle and Places of My Life.
Right, and he did those very much more like a sort of Channel 4 documentary or investigative journalism sort of. It was.
Well, that's another format that we've missed. So the big Partridge comeback was Mid Morning Matters.
Right.
Which was supposed to be a webcam inside North Norfolk Digital, which introduced Tim Key. That was done for the Foster's, the Australian beer, had a YouTube channel where they were reviving old comedy. Right. So that was done for the Foster's YouTube channel. So every Wednesday you'd get 15 minutes of Mid Morning Matters. And I worked in a school at the time. One of my friends from the hotels, we're still mates. I used to go around his on my lunch break specifically so we could watch the new Mid Morning Matters. And then they stitched those together into half-hour episodes, and then Sky Arts picked up for a second. Right. So that's a webcam inside his station.
So there's that, which is again another thing that radio had started doing online anyway. Like most radio stations now have that. And then and they messed with that quite well. And then but then the sort of Scissored Isle and was it Country?
These are the Places of My Life.
Right. Yeah, all that stuff is like. It's interesting because again in the because it came as well at a time like didn't he do there was a mock chat show where he talked about his book and stuff and he did an interview.
Oh, so at the end of
it was a real book in the real world, but it was a fake interview.
Because there was one of those with Peter Bainham for Bouncing Back, which was not a real book, but I think then the other books do have something that corresponds.
It's one of the more recent.
So it's like a secret. That's a great episode of the kind of fiction. It's like an additional episode to series 2, but it's an interview with Peter Bainham in character interviewing Alan Partridge, and it's notice the logo. It's produced by Pear Tree Productions, right? So it's like a deliberately sycophantic interview, and you see the interviewer step out of line a few times, and Partridge kind of gives him sort of chiding looks because it's There's a Place of My Life and Place of My Life and says, also have that because there's the bit where he takes a pill. And then they've tried to rescue. He's done an interview on a come down, and they've reshot his takes. And also when he's like in the swimming pool and he can't quite keep up, and then you can see him going like in her shot, and when it cuts back to him, he's like up to his waist. I'm fine.
Yeah. Well, again, the great thing about that is that's yet another format where you can play with the editing. And then there's the bit where he's trapped in the loading bay of wherever, and he's like...
It's the food scrounging guy, isn't it?
Much like Spider-Man isn't it Far From Home? He gets stuck in the...
Yes.
It's the same sort of like... It's weird, odd parallel. But yeah, it's the format though. It's messing with the format, and then that involves a lot of CCTV footage of him like in the... I don't know, it's just... It is a very... he seems like it's. I don't know if he's adaptable to different mediums or if it's purely the fact that this is a commentary on television presenting of all stripes. You know, I just think it really is what are these people like? What kind of life do you lead if you're this like avuncular person on television who's always like that, and then and false in a lot of ways, and then what are you like?
And he's so bad at maintaining.
Because Cizzadale and stuff, you see his house where he's living at the moment. He's obviously like bounced back because he's got like a mansion and a Range Rover. But you're like, knowing Alan Partridge, I bet that was a rider in the contract that he had to protect. Because you never go in.
Because that's the great thing about that. It's much like Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, which is a really. I'd like quite to talk about that one day because it does the same thing. It uses filmic techniques or televisual techniques to convey things about the character. You're conveying things about the character through editing and sound design because you're conveying their ineptitude at that and their insecurities and how they've tried to hide things. Because the scene when he's in the swimming pool, he's chosen a bit that's too deep, he can't keep up, and he's edited inserts to fill his questions in. But it's the girl from the first series of Peep Show, I can't remember her name, is opposite him. And you can see the look on her face that he's struggling. And she says, "Are you all right?" You can see him cut back, "Oh, I'm fine." But the build up to that, quite a lot of her dialogue, she's just sort of looking really concerned. And you can hear a bit of, it's really subtle and it builds
it's humorous. It's the same thing, like when he goes to sing "Why Do Birds" and it's too hot. It's like, "Why do birds?" It's too high.
It's too high.
Hallelujah! And he's like desperately trying to sing it, and it's like that thing. That's another one. It's like can't admit that he's out of his depth. Literally in that.
Absolutely not. He won't. Because he's not like he's insanely confident, but he's got very. He does not have a good estimation of his own abilities. This is really sort of Dunning-Kruger-ish. Thing with him.
I think there's an element of that. I think. There is an element of righteousness to it. It's really weird. I don't know if it's a play on the sort of Daily Express or Mail reader who is that adamantly correct, whatever in their little bubble. And as soon as, but then they'll have machinations of, I can step outside that and still be a king of the world, and then can't, and every time he's done it, he's been slapped back down. And it is like you say, it's the reveling in mediocrity and mundanity, like when he's like. What was this like? It has the largest listenership in the Greater Norfolk area. It's always that qualifier that is just like pathetic.
It's the overqualification, and also his kind of like the BBC won't have him, so he hates London. He just unilaterally hates London.
SHIT shithole.
You'll either be mugged or not appreciated.
One of the more telling episodes in the second season of the sitcom. How long have we got left? Is the one where he meets the teacher and he ends up back at school, and it's like that speaks to his psyche an awful lot because it's like he's still trying to get one over on authority, if you like, and the people who probably kept him down when he was at school, because you can imagine what he would have been like as a school kid. And he was probably the one who always had this blazer on and always had his tie done up and all that kind of stuff. And it's like and in that regard he's not a sheep, he's not easily led, but it's like but it's still wrong somehow.
You throw him against someone who, this is the thing, I think when you come to sympathise with him is when you see someone who can get one over on him socially, who's just a bit more kind of gracious. They often are portrayed as a bit smug, but it gets kind of pushed around by smoother people. And you want him to win because you identify with being kind of the put down and awkward one. Because you need to have someone really smug come and... So I think his one with... one of the relationships there is the one with Dave Clifton, the other DJ.
Yes.
Not because they're equally losers. And I think they swap slots on the radio. So I think in the first season he's got the graveyard shift, and the second season Dave Clifton has it.
I was going to say,
They kind of.
I think in the second one, Dave Clifton's taking over from him.
Right.
It's usually at the end of his show, isn't it? Whereas in the first one, I think he
takes over from Dave Clifton.
From him, I think maybe.
Right.
I don't know.
And in the movie, they're going really hard on Dave Clifton being like a junkie or whatever. But, they're just kind of equally small fry. So you don't. It is kind of nice when you see him beat Dave Clifton
Let's talk very quickly about the movie then, because that's a point of disagreement for us. I don't think that's the one medium I don't think works for Partridge. I think when you've got that feature-length narrative, I don't think it works. And B, it's got to, because everything has to be amped up. So there's a siege and there's all this sort of stuff, and it starts.
Yeah,
to
but it's the
lose
mundanity of the siege, because like that's what I like. I know what you mean, because I've talked about this before with Escalation. So it's like that Dad's Army film ends up with a big shootout, and it's like no, the whole point in Dad's Army was like they never got to do anything like that. That was the joke. What I like about Alan Partridge film, I mean, I like a lot about it, and I really like it. Local news legend Stuart White is in the Alan Partridge film. It ends with a low-speed chase to Cromer Pier, and then someone being held at gunpoint with an air rifle. It is kind of. I know what you mean, because it's got a gun in it and stuff.
But it feels like faux mundanity, because that situation is so ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? It's like yes, all the components are mundane and stupid, but it's like that. There's just I don't know. I love all the people. I love Cole Meany. I love all everyone in it is brilliant, and all the situations are really funny. But I think once it has to escalate into it's a film, so it's almost like it's got to have film.
It's got to justify its own existence.
Yeah, and I just don't. Because of his very nature, I just don't think it translates to film. If it was somehow intimated that this was Alan's film that he'd
the marketing
created,
kind of did that.
Yeah,
but the film itself does not.
That's the problem. Yeah, because he goes to the premiere as Alan Partridge.
I'll give you that. Yeah, because I think that's a tough one to square, because you would have to fully lean in to a dark place of my life situation where it's a badly made film, which it is not. I think it really works as a Partridge thing. I think it's got loads of really good Partridge lines in it. I know Coogan wasn't into it, and he kind of took a few days of filming to warm up to it. I really, really like it, and there's a continuation of Mid Morning Matters. It really works, but I will absolutely concede it doesn't take advantage of the medium like every other Partridge thing has. And I suppose really the ultimate Partridge film, Partridge should have had a hand in producing. And ergo, it's bad.
It should be a sort of behind-the-scenes documentary, but then in that way, it wouldn't be a film. It's like it'd be a feature-length doc, but it wouldn't be a film. And that's I think that's the problem, is he cannot translate from, because he's a presenter, and and it's like those mediums are about presenting, whereas film isn't really. I mean, certainly cinematic film is not narrative.
I will say, I really like it. I like Chuck and
I like
all the Partridge in it, but I've just learned from you that the problem is it doesn't take advantage of its format. Yeah. Which is what it really should do. Yeah. Because there's loads of really good stuff in it, and you get to see him sort of triumph and then fall, which is what always happens. Yeah. It's good. That's the first time Lynn came back as well, because he'd done loads of stuff without Lynn, and she's so important to the world of Alan.
And brilliant as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, she's so good. Yeah. That's such a well-realised character. Yeah. And Geordie Michael as well, which he gets a bit of a short shrift in the film, which is kind of annoying.
Yeah, which is but I haven't really talked about the peripheral characters, like, or the returning peripheral characters, like, and Lynn, as you say, is absolutely vital in that, in maintaining that curtain of mundanity, if nothing else. That she's the best assistant that he could get. Well, she is good, but it's like she's the only
bless her, she's the only person in the world that could be pushed around by him. The biggest fucking idiot. She's the only one who'll take it, and she, like, I think there's different schools of thought as to whether or not she's in love with him. I don't, but
No, she hates him. I think it's pretty clear to me. She wants to kill him.
No. I don't think she loves him though. I think love is, like you say, it's too much. It's not mundane enough. Yeah. I think she has a kind of quasi-maternal relationship. That's what I think. She sort of nurtures him, because you see the length she goes to. It isn't always out of kind of fear. I think she sort of like nurtures him
in the more recent ones, where he's stepping off the set, and she's like almost like a mum talking to her son, kind of at school, doing his tie-up sort of stuff. They
made her vaguely evil in this time. Like she's got this Lady Macbeth thing going on.
Yeah, but I think in the series, especially in the second series, it's like when she's got the rubber knife and he's like, "Come on, have a go," or whatever, and she's like, literally stabbing it, and he's like, "You look like you enjoyed that." It's like, there is that sort of underlying, like, she wants to fucking kill him. Like, she doesn't like it.
As you would.
Yes.
If you worked for that awful
And then her boyfriend stands up to him in the last episode. That's what I think. She doesn't show up for a while, because it's like, he probably fired her.
Gordon.
Yeah. Gordon the Christian.
Born Again. I love that.
Yeah.
And it turns out, I suppose it was like 1998 or no, it's 2000, that one.
Yeah.
Like she's on like $8,000 a year or whatever. And she's like, it's constant back and cool.
£9,500. Anyway, we ought to wrap up.
Time to wrap up. Anyway,
Yeah.
that was massively self-indulgent. But
Yeah.
there you go. Partridge has been running through what we've been doing for ages. So why not just do that? Clear it all up. Look much like the Simpsons one. So we hope you enjoyed it. I've been going through a phase recently, as of you, of trying to list off all the social media and stuff. Oh no. So once again, we overran. This happened a lot recently. We're just wrapping up, so it's all over. I was just about to say we'll try and list off all the social media we have, but it's all just listed down there. So go down the description, have a look if you want to find out. You get this sweet merch and all that. We'll be back next time with another thing. We love you. Goodbye.
I was going to say, you should have done.
Support your 7th or 8th favourite YouTube channel by buying crap, tat, junk, hogwash and filth at redbubble.com/people/Val Verde Shop.